So thank you very much for the chance to share a little bit about what OpenMRS team, now called Banda Health, has been doing. Just to start, what the reason for the name change is that we have a new nonprofit organization in the US that we created. And the primary reason for that was just to be able to find different kinds of revenue sources that would not be readily available under the previous organization. We're still doing the same thing. We're still the same people. We're still working on OpenMRS, and our goals are still primarily the same, though they have broadened a little bit. Over the past year and a half, we've been working on 3 main areas of work. The first is in managing 2 implementations that we're working on, both just as general purpose OpenMRS installations, but they also act as pilot sites for the OpenMRS modules that we have developed. The next piece is in general OpenMRS development, which is something that we are starting to get more into now that we're starting to, now that the implementation sites that we're using are looking to push OpenMRS a little bit more. And then the last piece, which most of you will be familiar with, is the module development that we have done. We have 2 modules that we've created along with another couple supporting ones, an inventory system and a cashier system. So to start, I'll just share a little bit about the implementations that we've been working on. Both of the sites are in Kenya. We have one medium-sized clinic and another medium-sized hospital. And they're both using OpenMRS, as I said, primarily as pilot sites for the inventory and cashier modules that we've been working on. But over the last year, they've really been pushing us to include more, using OpenMRS more as an EMR system. So we've been trying to figure out how do we do that, because at least based on how we've looked at OpenMRS and the features that we see, it's not really a natural fit in that context. So we're trying to come up with different systems and processes that will allow institutions to use OpenMRS in kind of alongside paper-based systems until we are able to either utilize other people's work that allow us to use OpenMRS in more of an EMR setting, or we do that work ourselves. The main area that we see where OpenMRS is lacking for EMR purposes is in the creation and utilization of orders. I know that on the back end orders exist, but it seems like the front end is either non-existent or isn't very functional. And so that's one of the pieces where we'll be increasingly interested in either utilizing people who are doing work on it or helping to do that, or maybe both. Specifically, we're thinking of things like ordering lab tests and creating a good prescription writer for drug orders. And then because we already have a cashier and inventory system, we want to be able to consume those orders in our systems so that the clinician can drive the data instead of the patient having a cashier and inventory clerk having to re-enter the same data that was already defined by a clinician somewhere else. And the other piece that's associated with that would be the creation of some kind of like a work list for providers and institutions, so that, let's say, a pharmacist knows what drug orders they need to fulfill, a lab tech knows what tests they need to do, that kind of stuff. So that there's a bit more workflow within the patient flow within OpenMRS, and also just for data in general. So that's one key area, and then that's kind of flows into the next area that we've been kind of getting more into, which, like I said, was the OpenMRS development piece. We took some time to integrate some work that another team did on kind of reinstituting the visit types that used to be present in the old 1.x view of OpenMRS and porting it over to the 2.x pages. So we did that, and then another one of our programmers did the same thing on the visit attribute side. So now visit attributes will show up on the visit dialog when you create a new visit. And that was kind of a requirement. For one specific piece of information here in Kenya, they have some reports that require you to denote whether or not a patient, this is their first visit or not. It's kind of a stupid piece of data, to be honest, but in any case, all the institutions need it. So we've just been kind of working on figuring out pieces of OpenMRS functionality that seem to be missing based on our requirements, and then trying to work to fill those gaps. So we'll be continuing to work on both of those here in the future as well. On the module side of things, the big piece that we did was in updating our inventory and cashier systems to the new 2.0 UI, or 2 point whatever UI. And I'll just show a demo of that here in a little bit. So we did that, which is porting over all of the pages that were previously designed for the old UI and moving over to the new one, as well as instituting a few improvements. And then more recently, we've been working on 2 new modules for a new implementation that we're doing. The modules are pretty general purpose and kind of basic. One just allows you to create a list of tasks that are associated with a visit that you can just check to say whether or not they're open or not, open or complete. And then the other piece is a flexible patient list page that allows you to define a configurable set of parameters to show a dynamic list of patients, and then see those patients by some specified order, and then get to the visit pages or the patient dashboard from that. So I can show a demo of both of those systems. Here, let me see if I can get this to work. Oh, great. Sorry, I didn't know there was an extension required.
Yeah, that's.
Come on. There we go. Okay, let me know when you can see my window. Can anybody see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So this is just, I think this is OpenMRS 11 point something with the 2.3.1 version of the reference application running on top. And so we have added these buttons here, inventory and cashier. This is actually the one that says internal medicine patient list. That'll actually just be patient list. So I'll just go through real quick some of the main changes. On our inventory side of things, we've just ported over all of our management pages to use the new UI. If you've seen our old versions of it, it's the same thing. It's just been updated to kind of follow the same look and feel as the 2.0 pages. I have to say that I really hate the fact that the standard seems to be using red for cancel, because that just seems odd to me. But anyways, that's just that's completely besides the point. The main page here is being able to create operations. Operations are what allow you to move your stock throughout your system. So just to give an example, if I want to transfer stocks between, let's say not the name, laboratory and pharmacy, I can just start to search for things and automatically search through our stuff. We added some features here to show the existing quantity in a place, so that it'll still let you do. It'll still let you go into the negative, but at least it'll give you a warning if you're going to do that. You can kind of tell here, out of stock, that what you're trying to do doesn't make sense. This is very similar to the previous page that we had in the 1.x version of things. It's just been updated and enhanced slightly. So let's see. And that's the inventory side of things. Cashier is very similar. Most of the work that you would do would be on creating a bill. This works once again in the same way as our old pages did. It's intended to be used by a cashier and cash desk, so it's meant to be really simple to work with, fast to use, hopefully. And yeah, it works very similar to our old pages. It's just been updated, so it's now consistent with the rest of the system, rather than all of a sudden throwing you into a 1.x view. We're still actively maintaining these modules, kind of taking feedback. The next piece of functionality that we'll probably work on in the cashier piece will be better support for insurances, at least basic insurances. But as it stands right now, both the inventory and cashier pieces are stable, and they work well as far as we know. We've been working also on integrating some work from some other partners who've been working with us here in Kenya. We've added some features to primarily the inventory module And so we're taking those and merging those changes back into our repository. So the other piece that we've been working on is what we call visit tasks. And so a visit task is just a very basic list of things that you want to have completed for a patient. So you can see here, this is just sample data for sample person where I entered this in. If you want to add a new task, you can just start typing. So say check bed, it enters, shows up in here. Once that's finished, I can check that. And if I go and look over here, I can see that this was created by me on this date. It was completed by me on this date. And then along with that, there are also the ability to create predefined tasks. They can either be for me. So this is the thing that only I do. So I created this task by going up in here and clicking on my predefined tasks page. We also define global ones. And if I just click, it just gets added down here. The mindset for this, or the use case for this, came from a group that was using Wunderlist to manage their patients in an institution. And they just wanted an easy way to be able to keep track of what things needed to be done for a patient. And so each and every day, they have the list of their checklist of things that they need to go through for a patient. And they just want to be able to go through and really quickly add them. And then as they get finished, just quickly check them off so that they can tell which things have been done and which things haven't. And then also be able to see a history of what was done for a patient. So that is the visit task module. Here's the page where if I go to my predefined visit tasks, I can see here's the ones that I have. If I want to add another one, I can just add another one in real quick. And once this page reloads, it'll show up in here. Once I add it in, I can't add it again until I mark this one as complete. And then I can see it again. And then there's also on the main page, if I go to system administration, predefined tasks. If you have the right privileges, you can define global visit tasks that'll show up in that drop-down box. So that's a visit task. It's pretty basic, but hopefully it might be useful to others. For any of these things, by the way, if anybody here has feedback on ways that this could be more generally useful or things that we should perhaps consider to make this just more useful, please, we would love feedback on this. Both of these, by the way, the visit tasks and the patient list are under active development, so they're not quite done yet. That's why we haven't really talked too much about them. On the patient list side of things, let me just go to here. And the patient list, like I said, it's a configurable list of patients. So this is just showing, this is a list that I made for male patients who have an active visit. So right now there's only one person in here. And it just shows basic information for the patient as well as a little bit more detailed stuff. These lists are completely configurable. So if I go in here, I can see here's the patient list that we defined for this, where I said, okay, I wanted the P, which stands for patient gender, to equal male. And I want the has active visit, V stands for visit, has active visit equal to true. And then you can also define custom sort orderings. This stuff doesn't quite work quite yet. But you can define any one of these, we call these patient information fields. So basically it's anything related to the patient field, patient attribute, visit field, or visit attribute. And these are, we've just kind of hard-coded and defined these at this point. In the future, in the later versions, we may update this so that it is dynamic or more dynamic, so at least it can be defined, or you can define your own if you want. But the idea here is that any of these common fields that you might want to either have a sort order or have some kind of conditional inclusion for the list can be defined here for these fields. And then the operator and value will automatically flow naturally from the selected field. And then the last piece here, we have the display templates. This is, go back to the list. This is what determines what gets shown here in the list. So this is the template that we have here defined. It's kind of a mix of HTML and then a few identifiers here. So I've said that we have this div tag, and this is kind of like a default one, where it'll show the patient identifier, then the full name and the gender and age. You can see here in the header, it shows the patient identifier, the full name, the gender, and then the age. So you can completely change that depending on what you need. And then you have the similar kind of thing for the body, which is the segment below. So you can define how this will show up based on exactly what you need. And the idea here is that one of our clients, they want their clinicians to be able to know at a basic glance what patients do they need to see. In their instance, they're going to be doing that by ward. So a patient will have a visit attribute that gets defined so that you can specify which ward a given patient is in, and then also a bed number. And so they want to be able to see, that a clinician is going to know that I'm in the men's ward today, and they want to see the patients that they need to look at ordered by the bed number. And so this would just give a basic list. And then from here, you can go to the visit details page, you can go to the patient dashboard, you can do all the normal things that you'd be able to do. In the future, we may update these areas so that you can show a little bit more detail. One of the criticisms that we've heard from a number of different people about OpenMRS, especially in a clinical setting, is that it's too clicky. You have to click so many times to do anything. And they want more information with less clicks. And so we want to try to support that if we can. So that's the patient list module. This one is very under development. We're hoping to have this one somewhat finished by the end of the year and really finished and released by the first quarter of 2017. So that's the primary work we have been doing. If I have time, let me just stop sharing here. Let's see, seems like I have a few more minutes. Oh, is there a demo site, somebody asked? Yes, we do. We have a demo site for the cashier and inventory stuff at this address. I'll put it in here. Similar to OpenMRSAfrica.org. And then the password is just demo123 with a capital D, I think. If not, you can just ask me. I'll send you the correct information. So for our upcoming work, we have 3 main areas that we're focused on right now. First is the continued work on our modules, the ones that I was just talking about. So that's maintenance work on the cashier and inventory modules, and then it's finishing up the visit tasks and patient list modules. And then along with that is working to improve ordering, or at least improve or create the ordering UI in OpenMRS. The specific area that we want to focus on first would be a prescription writer. We have a guy, a Canadian doctor, who spends about half his time here in Kenya, who helped to design and work on a medical record system in Canada, who has some pretty good feedback on how to design a good prescription writer. And so we're working with him to try to create something in OpenMRS. And then the next piece that we want, based on the ordering, is to be able to consume those orders in the cashier and inventory modules. And then the last piece, like I mentioned before, is some kind of provider work list so that they can see what they need to do. So that's module work, ordering, OpenMRS ordering. And then the last piece is something that we have a desire to do, but I don't know if we'll have the time and the money to do. And that's to start to create pre-configured location-specific configurations of OpenMRS. One thing that we've noticed in the 2 pilot sites that we've worked with, and then other sites that we've been working with as well, is that the setup of OpenMRS is significant. The time it takes to get an institution up and running, both with concepts, but also just understanding how OpenMRS works and how they want to use it and how it fits into their workflows is pretty difficult. And we found that to be true even with places that have fairly good resources in terms of personnel. And so what we want to try to do is create a specific distribution to start a Kenya setting. So it has all the concepts that you would need in Kenya. It would have the reports that you would need to provide to the government. It would have all the data the associated data you need to generate those reports, whether they're patient fields or visit fields. And then because of the OpenMRS modules that we've written, we would also probably create a core set of inventory items that an institution in Kenya would be likely to have. Along with that, we want to try to create a mobile-first interface. I know that there's different groups that have been working on the mobile pieces. This is something that we were looking at a few months ago, and we hope to actually start really diving into the development of early 2017. but we think that's going to be a significantly easier interface for low resource places to use. And then we also think that there's a number of different partners on the hardware side of things that can make that a viable option. There's a company here in Nairobi called Brick, which has basically a let's see, like a wireless access point / cell modem / battery in a box that they sell right now that just makes it really easy to get connected. You just have to push a button. You don't have to think too much about it. They are also coming out with, in the near future, something they call a super brick, which is everything that I just mentioned plus an embedded server. And so we're interested to see if we can get a version of OpenMRS running on that embedded server, and then just sell that along with a number of ruggedized tablets as options for medium-sized clinics. But even the ruggedized tablets themselves could be useful in smaller size places. But our vision for that is to figure out how to do either multi-site or multi-tenant cloud instances of OpenMRS and make it just as simple as possible for an institution to get up and running. I mean, my goal would be, or our goal is to be able to set up OpenMRS as simple as you would set up, say, a HipChat server, where you just plug in, here's the name of my institution, here's my payment details, and boom, you have an instance that's already up and running. It's running in the cloud. As long as you can keep, some basic type of connection, or at least connect periodically if you're running this on a tablet, then you have a version of OpenMRS that's already configured. You don't have to do a lot of training. You don't have to do a lot of configuration to get up and running. It's tailored towards the environment where it's likely to be used. So that is one of the pieces that we'd really like to work on, but we don't know if we'll have the time. So that's what we've been doing. So if you see Banda Health, you know that it's the same people as OpenHMIS. You just kind of change the name depending on the context, but that's who we are. That's what we're doing. Anybody have any questions?
Excellent. Thank you. A lot of really interesting work going on. I noticed, several of your things are done in modules. Several things you're adopting the 2.x. I wondered are there things you're doing to core, and are you able to get those into the platform easily, or have you had to work off a fork?
Well, we definitely don't want to fork. I think that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
For us, we think the platform is a great platform, so we want to build stuff on top of it. If any of the things that we've done are generally usable, and people think that they would be just useful as having a part of core, that's great. We'd be more than happy to help make that happen. But I think it feels like, to be good citizens within the OpenMRS community, we kind of want to make sure that what we do is self-contained and won't break what other people are doing. But if there is any interest in what we have done, making it into either part of the ref app or into core, let us know. Was that kind of what your question was?
Well, there's one, I wanted to make sure that you're getting your needs met in terms of like the platform or that what the community is producing isn't making your life harder. Obviously, and you've pointed out ways in which we could do better, or we could make some improvements that would, we've been talking about things like OpenMRS on a brick, or what I've called vertical packaging, which is making it easier to relate all the functionality and metadata within OpenMRS together, so that it's easier to deploy and say, okay, I want to plug in the HIV solution and the order entry solution and like put these pieces together and make that a distribution, and which seems aligned with some of the things you're trying to accomplish, is that make it as easy as HipChat. But I ask in part to just make sure that we're not making putting up barriers for you in terms of development. And then the other side was, I see, and some of my other questions in the notes were related to the fact that some of what you guys are doing is very much related to what other folks are doing. And so I see opportunities where it might not just be a matter of, is there someone else that that wants to use what you guys have done? There might be things where other people are trying to solve the same problem, and by working together, you might be able to get it done twice as fast. Or there might be folks that have a solution that you could, that's 80% of what you want, and you could spend 20% of the time, adapting it rather than writing your own.
Yeah, no, good question. So the first answer is no. I don't think we've noticed anything that has gotten in our way in terms of the platform or your development processes or the communication or anything like that. On the other side of the second question, we're totally open. I mean, everything that we do is open source. All the stuff that we do, we try to follow the example that OpenMRS has provided. And so we are really interested in collaborating with others. We're interested. We don't want to do extra work if we don't need to. We want to work with others. So if people want to work with us, or if they want us to work with them, I mean, we are very flexible, and we want to try to be good community members to the extent that we can.
On that note, are you guys going to have some presence at the next week's OpenMRS meeting?
Unfortunately, no. But which is ridiculous. I know it's really close, but I don't think that we are going to be able to do that. Though, is there still space available there?
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, that's something that we may look at.
I mean, because I see what the work you're doing is like would be perfect to share with other folks. I mean, I think the prescription writing. I mean, ThoughtWorks is over in I can't remember which country it is, but it's a little not too far further east or west in Africa, but they have groups working specifically on prescription writing and pulling the data modeled into the platform so they can support writing, and it sounds very much like the spaces you were interested in working in.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's great to know, because I don't want to. We already have enough work to do, so if we can use stuff that other people have already written, that's great. or contribute to that too. But no, I'll definitely have to check and see if we can at least get somebody out to Uganda.
Yeah, because I mean, like getting Jonathan Teisch, who's got a ton of experience creating systems and order entry, who's working with ThoughtWorks and designing the fundamentals to improve prescription writing, in touch with your expert, and kind of at least not to necessarily say you have to just develop one thing, but to at least make sure the way you're approaching things are complementary, so that the basic fundamental kind of design is going to be convergent rather than divergent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And I would encourage, whether or not we're able to come next week, I hope that there's the desire in the OpenMRS community to make some of these more, I mean, I think of them as kind of EMR-ish kind of stuff, that is, like order entry and workflow within OpenMRS, making that more part of at least the core of the ref app, if not just core to OpenMRS in general. Yeah. I think most places, at least for the clients that we're talking to, they expect that that's part of it.
Yeah, and that's long been one of our desires. The challenge is we thought for as a group of organizations all trying to solve problems, whether it's HIV, TB, whatever, and agreeing to kind of share the platform. We've all been kind of independent organizations doing our own work for many years, and the thought was, well, if we're collaborating on a platform and we're sharing stuff enough, that thing will evolve out of like, okay, you make a cashier module, we'll make an or you make an inventory module, we'll make a order entry module, and we'll get to pick the best of the whatever shows up, and that EMR will evolve out of that. And we've proven over the last 10 years that isn't going to happen. And I think in part is because technology has been changing so rapidly in terms of people are switching UI frameworks. Even our attempt at a reboot of the UI, the 2.0 UI that you guys have been using. Are you doing Angular, or are you doing GSP
Well, Angular with GSP, but
Okay.
mostly Angular. Most of the
Okay.
logic is in Angular.
Yeah. Okay. Because the and are you adding when you add modules and stuff, do you tend to expose them through REST and then do Angular against that?
Yeah, that's exactly how we
Okay.
do all of our stuff.
Because that seems to be the approach that most folks are taking, but where that I mean the shift in terms of where people have been, what they've been doing with the UI, and our attempt at a reboot of the UI came right before kind of Angular and those client-side technologies and REST really took off, and so so that put us in a position where it was like, well, here's the OpenMRS specific way to create web apps versus the way everybody else is doing it, and so a lot of folks are in Bomni, your guys, Ampath, Eastside. You look at pretty much anybody, and they're doing similar things to what you're doing, but we're not at that higher level sharing or collaborating the way we had in the past when we were all sharing the same kind of JSP framework. And part of my hope with this conference is to start to heal that or mend that, and kind of and there's been a lot of effort of folks trying to create kind of an OpenMRS 3.0 or whatever it becomes to be that trying to get back to a more out of the box. Here's the core functionality. That's a lot of what ThoughtWorks led them to build Bomni, and that's a lot of their interest in terms of where they want to see OpenMRS going as well. So it's the challenge is when you have a bunch of organizations that are all great people doing great work, but need to get their work done. For someone to come and say, okay, I'm going to stop all my work and build the EMR that everybody will benefit everybody. We haven't had I've actually filed grants trying to fund those, and we're working on fundraising to help realize that, but we don't have people coming well resourced to say, okay, we're going to dedicate for the next 6 months or a year to build this thing, and that's what we're trying to get to ASAP.
Great. It's good to hear. I think we will have some funds available specifically for working. Well, we hope to have some funds available specifically for this kind of general purpose EMR-ish kind of stuff. Yeah. So if we can utilize those funds in a way that allows everybody to capitalize.
Well, I'm sure part of the conversation next week will be around to that design of kind of what are the core components, the highest priority, and let's the community make sure we're trying to consolidate toward those, so we can get to share higher up the stack.
Great.
So, I'll as soon as this call's over, I'll copy you with Jeff and some of the people that have been working on the conference, and see if we can't find some way to get at least some representation of your group at the conference. Okay,
thank you very much.
And then another question was, have you looked at the Android or iOS clients that have been made for OpenMRS? You talked about going
just very minimally.
If looking at those, if you were planning a different.
Sorry, you were breaking up there, so I couldn't quite hear you. But we just hired a mobile developer, so that's something that we're going to start on, really evaluating the different solutions in January.
Yeah, and I don't know that we'll find a kind of one size fits all. That may not exist, but it would be nice if there. I know like Sol Develop has done a lot with an Android, building up an Android client, and I think would be very interested in, hey, how can we shape this so that it's actually meaningful to implementation on the ground, in a more, in a real way, like getting used in clinics. So
Yeah, we would love to be able to use something that exists as well. So it's just a question of whether or not it's technically feasible given some of the requirements that we do have.
Yeah. The other piece I saw in when you demonstrated the patient list thing that I think Darius will be interested in seeing. He can look back at the video. I'll put it on YouTube. But I can't but help and think that kind of functionality would be nice in a general patient search tool, like a global, like whenever you're searching for patients, being able to say, oh, I want to find a patient, I want these lists, like instead of just searching by name, I want to look at the list of people that are on this ward, or I want people that meet these criteria.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, just thinking kind of long term, function.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we designed it, it should be. I mean, it's actually it'll be basically the same kind of query that you do. It'd just be presenting the patient information in a different way. So when we get to the point where we feel like it's stable, we'll certainly post about it on OpenMRS Talk and try to get feedback on the technical side of things.
Interested in getting feedback. What's
Sorry, Burke, you're cutting out on my end. I can't
Sorry, the question was, you mentioned several times that you were interested in getting feedback, but it wasn't clear to me what the best way to get feedback to you. If someone visited your demo site, is it obvious how they would give you feedback?
Probably the best way is via OpenMRS Talk. You're just pinging myself or any one of our other developers who have been asking questions about this kind of stuff. I mean, we had a post about getting feedback on our specification for the patient lists module. So, places like that, or emailing me. This is my email address. That's probably the easiest way.
I noticed
Sorry, I didn't get any of that.
Sorry, we have for various communities or folks that are working on efforts like yours, like for example, Bomni or particular software or distributions. We've given folks a category on Talk that has helped kind of shaped their, give it a spot for people to have conversations around that work. Is that something you would be interested in?
Yeah, definitely. That would be helpful, at least for us to make sure that some things don't fall through the cracks, which they sometimes do.
And your IBEWES is your OpenMRS ID?
Yeah.
Burke, you are still cutting out or not audible.
Sorry. One of the things, I think we've covered most of the questions I had. One of the things we were talking about was Banda is looking to create some prescription writing, a prescription writing solution. And I mentioned that ThoughtWorks was in that space and doing modeling around that. So you, Darius, and maybe Jonathan might want to touch base with Wes. Unfortunately, they're not. It doesn't sound like they're going to make it to the meeting next week, but we'll try to get somebody there if we can.
Yeah, Bomni includes prescription writing functionality, but also there's actively work going on to develop or to refactor or to improve the user interface for that. And there's some mock-ups that I think will work on getting shared. At the very least, we should make sure that you can see what we're already doing in terms of user interface design. Whether we're able to collaborate on anything or not, I don't know.
Yeah, my suggestion was that that there's also some design under the hood being considered in terms of tweaks to the platform that we should make sure are aligned or or Wes is aware of. And then the user interface, at least to kind of make sure that approaches are similar enough and not completely divergent in terms of expectations of what the platform is going to provide.
Will any of you be stopping at all in Nairobi on your way either in or out the conference?
Not me.
I think I heard Paul might. I'm going straight into Kampala, so I'm not.
Okay. All right. Well, I will try to talk with the director and see if we can figure out a way to get at least somebody or somebody's there next week.
I'll share this of kind of. Wes, are the developer forum or the design forums, I think Monday is a little bit earlier, are those useful to you guys at all? I know we probably had you on the calls in the past. I mean, obviously you're on one now, but I just wonder, it sounds like OpenMRS Talk convenient thing. Are there other ways or things you think as a community communication tools or ways that we could make it easier for people to see what you guys are doing, see what other folks are doing?
OpenMRS Talk is good. I don't really find the calls particularly useful, mostly just because I find it about half the time it works well, and the other half I can barely understand what people are saying. So it's just, for me at least, I have not found it particularly useful. One thing that I would suggest is, I know that the IRC chat room that you have is just, that's, everybody supports IRC, but moving to something that allows you to see history that's a bit more modern, whether it's something like, I don't know if Slack probably isn't an option because it doesn't really support open-ended organizations, but maybe something like Rocket Chat or Hip Chat or something else would be nice.
Using Telegram.
Pardon?
A lot of people are using Telegram.
Okay, I didn't even know that. All right, so I should check that out.
Yeah, I think it's, I think om.rs/tg would get you there.
All right, I'll check that out. But our primary way of interacting with people in the OpenMRS community is through OpenMRS Talk.
Okay. All right, any other questions from folks?
Wes, how big are the institutions? You said they're medium-sized, but I just wanted to have some idea of what medium meant. It's a bit of a vague term for me.
Yeah, it is. The clinic sees, on an average day, they see maybe 200 patients or so, but it's all outpatient. The hospital has and I don't actually quite remember. I think it's around 125 beds, and then they see maybe, depending on the day, up to maybe 300 to 400 outpatient visits.
Mm-hmm. That's fairly similar to our situation here. 169 beds and 300 to 400 outpatients 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And an ER that does, what's it do? It's got about 10 beds in it, so and it's often fairly full.
All right. Well, where is that?
That's in rural Nepal, regional
Okay.
Nepal. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for presenting and taking the time. We appreciate it. And
Thank you.
I'll be posting the screencast on YouTube as soon as I can get it up there.
Great. Thank you very much.